Good evening from the Netherlands, but more important, good afternoon in Costa Rica and in Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Roel Orange, and together with my colleague Miss Urbanova, today we have the pleasure to host a match of the day 2 part of the group phase. So it means this is the second match for one team, the first match because it is a team with 4 universities. And today I give the floor to my colleague who will be hosting the match.
Thank you very much, and indeed, good day to the two teams. Welcome all of University of Wind's compliance. In a short while, we'll find out which action, starting with ULACIT team, Miss Alvarado.
Really happy to be here participating.
Of West Indies, Miss Cabrales.
Hi. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Naomi Cabrales from the University.
Thank you, welcome.
Hi, I'm Julian Porras. I'm from the University of Science and Technology, and I'm very glad for the opportunity and for this debate.
Thank you, welcome, Mr. Fernandez of University of West Indies.
Hi for this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, welcome, Ms. Sanchez of ULACIT.
Good afternoon to all. My name is Fiorella Sanchez, and it's so pleasure to be here with you.
Welcome.
Student at the University of the West Indies, and I'm honored to be participating in this competition here today.
Thank you very much, and welcome. I would also like to take this opportunity to welcome one of the 3 judges for today's debate, Professor Flores. Thank you very much and welcome. If I can just get the confirmation that you can see the screen.
Yes.
And for today's debate, it will be the University of the West Indies debate team that will argue for the against position, and it will be the ULACIT team, the Latin American University of Sciences and Technology, that will argue in favor of the motion, and thus that the state compliance with human rights obligations must. For now, you have 5 minutes to finalize your preparations. Feel free to close your cameras and microphones. Thank you, everyone. Your time for final preparation has now passed. We'll proceed by hearing the opening statements, starting with the Latin American University of Sciences and...
I'm visible and audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. I will start my intervention in 3, 2, 1. Honorable judges, distinguished opponents, let me begin with a simple few questions. What is the right to life if the air is no longer safe? What does the right to food mean if ecosystems are collapsing? What is human dignity if the natural state compliance with human rights must include protection of shared global resources? Human rights and environmental protections are not separate issues. They depend on each other. Human rights are not an abstract idea. They depend on real world conditions. When we speak about shared global resources, we mean the oceans, biodiversity, Antarctica, forests like the Amazon, and even global digital infrastructure. These are not policy choices. They are the foundation of what makes human rights possible. The idea is not new or radical. Fundamental international agreements like the Stockholm Declaration recognizes more than 50 years ago that every person has the right to an environment adequate for their well-being, and that we all have the responsibility to protect it for present and future generations. Between a state and citizens today, they also concern future generations. Under the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, in the General Comment number 9, states may choose their methods, but they cannot ignore results. Rights must be effectively realized. Now, consider the 3 core duties of human rights law: that duty to respect, that duty to protect, and the duty to fulfill. Environmental harm does not stop at borders. Carbon emissions travels. Ocean acidification spreads. Climate-related drought in one country affects food systems worldwide. That is why agreements like the Paris Agreement exist, not to create new rights, but to help states meet existing human rights obligations. The Maastricht Principles on extraterritorial obligations clarify that states must avoid actions that foreseeably harm the enjoyment of rights beyond their borders. This does not eliminate sovereignty. It defines responsibly sovereignty. In the 21st century, sovereignty cannot mean the freedom to cause serious harm to others. If a state's policy predicts why international equal burden, universal in theory, for that.
Yes, you're visible.
Human rights law creates defined legal obligations for states to respect and protect fundamental human rights. However, that does not make them the custodians of shared global resources. Shared global resources refers to areas that belong to everyone, such as the atmosphere and the high seas. Expanding state compliance to include shared global resources will stretch human rights law beyond its established legal boundaries. We assert that state compliance with human rights obligations should not include shared global resources for 3 reasons. Firstly, it will exert rights, and lastly, it can impose an unsustainable legal obligation. Firstly, requiring states to protect shared global resources as part of their human rights obligations will exacerbate the power imbalance between developed and developing countries. Developed countries establish multinational corporations in developing countries, which leads to the environmental degradation of the host country. The Bhopal gas tragedy in India highlights this imbalance as the US-based corporation caused a toxic leak, resulting in thousands of deaths and decades-long environmental impact. India had to bear the social, environmental, and financial consequences of this toxic leak. Therefore, requiring states to protect shared global resources will lead to the violation of harm, vulnerable abuse connected to a clean, renewable $2 billion wind farm project was halted because it violated the land rights of the indigenous Zapotec people. In Norway, through the Fossen case, the construction of 151 wind turbines were found on expropriated land, were found to protect human rights laws and resources, as the threshold for resources, crucial and cultural rights. Come to share global resources is not immediate. It is collective and it is long-term. Therefore, it will be an unsustainable legal obligation and it risks eroding the credibility of human rights law itself. For these reasons, we firmly assert that state compliance with.
Thank you. We have now heard the.
Am I visible and audible?
You are.
Our data shows that states cannot protect rights such as life, health, food, or housing if the natural systems that support these rights are being damaged. The Maastricht Principles on the Human Rights of Future Generations explains that the human rights also belong to future generations, and that states must avoid actions that create environmental harm that could affect them. In other words, protecting the environment is not separate from human rights. It is part of human rights protection itself. We also see that responsibility does not stop at national borders. In the Sachi against Argentina case, the Committee on the Rights of the Child recognized that the states may have responsibility when their environmental impact causes predictable harm to people in other countries. This shows that global problems require global responsibility. Shared global resources such as the atmosphere and biodiversity belong to all humanity. If one state damages them, everyone is affected. That is why states cannot claim they respect human rights while ignoring the global rights depends on shared resources. Protecting those resources becomes a legal and moral duty. Real compliance with human rights must include protecting the planet that sustains us all.
You have 2 minutes for your first against.
Am I audible and visible?
You are.
The affirmative team asserts that human rights obligations must include the protection of shared global resources to secure sustenance for future generations. But we argue that this expansion risks destroying the environment today. Rights-based regimes are costly, slow, and procedurally rigid, harming those they claim to protect. Resources in the high seas and this obstruct, there will be no stable tomorrow and no future generation. Left to protect. We assert that human rights obligations should not include the protection of shared global resources because it exacerbates inequities between developed and developing nations. When developing nations are faced with tougher environmental restrictions, the burden is offwards. Western countries redirect, and Thailand absorb large volumes, most of it being illegally shipped or misdeclared, while Ghana has increasingly become a dumping ground for waste exports. Therefore, by expanding human rights obligations to include them onto less regulated and more vulnerable economies. Thank you.
Thank you. To proceed to second rebuttal, ULACIT debate team, you have 2 minutes.
My in hand on virtual necessity under the second article of the states possible to enjoy. No state can secure the collapses. No state can ensure housing rights if sea levels displace entire communities. The Paris Agreement explicitly recognizes that climate change is a common concern of humankind and affirms that when talking about climate action, parties must respect and consider their human rights obligations, including the right to health. It further recognizes the fundamental priority of safeguarding food security and the importance of ecosystems and biodiversity. This is why cooperation is not optional. It's legal it's legally connected to effectiveness. Look at Antarctica. Through intergovernmental cooperation to effectiveness. Look at Antarctica. Through intergovernmental cooperations, states have chosen preservation over exploitation. The European Union integrates environmental protection directly into binding regional law. This is not about weakening sovereignty. It's about recognizing interdependence. Sovereignty today exists in a world where environmental harm crosses borders instantly. If rights are universal and the environmental harm is global, then responsibility must also be shared.
Thank you. Now inviting University of West Indies for your second rebuttal, 2 minutes.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. The affirmative team asserts that human rights obligations must include the protection of shared global resources because they are interdependent. But we argue that human rights law protects individuals against concrete attributable state action. It does not constitutionalize every ecological condition affecting human welfare. For instance, in the case of Paba v. Commonwealth of Australia, the Australian Federal Supreme Court held that the Australian government did not owe a specific enforceable duty to protect Australian citizens from climate change, despite the fact that the court acknowledged the overt evidence of climate impact. Moreover, in the case of Cavallo v. European Parliament and Council, the Court of Justice of the European Union rejected a challenge to the EU's emission targets, holding that the applicants were not sufficiently effective. Together, these cases illustrate the court's reluctance to constitutionalize environmental interdependency into enforceable obligations. We assert human rights obligations should not include the protection of shared global resources because it leads to the violation of other human rights. Climate mitigation requires accelerated deployment of renewable energy infrastructure, such as solar panels and electric vehicles. Yet half of the global solar-grade polysilicon production is linked to forced labor programs involving the Uyghur populations in China. Additionally, cobalt mining, an essential resource for electric vehicle batteries, is heavily reliant on child slave labor and hazardous working conditions. Therefore, by expanding human rights into this domain, we risk generating competing positive duties. Environmental protection on one hand and labor and developmental rights on the other. But as Irene Khan noted, no cause can justify the abuse of human rights. Thank you.
Global resources is not an expansion of power. It's a recognition of reality. Environmental harm does not respect borders. Power imbalances because the most vulnerable states and communities suffer the greatest consequence of global degradation that they did little to cause. Nor does this impose that an unattainable legal obligation. International law already incorporates flexibility to differentiate responsibilities, progressive commitments, and domestic implementation. What we defend is not centralized control, but cooperative responsibility grounded in fairness. Human rights cannot be fully realized if the natural systems that sustain life collapse. This is not an overreach, it's a necessity. The Paris Agreement converts collective responsibility into binding commitments, and the UN 2030 Agenda makes sustainability inseparable from development and human dignity. I finish with my statement. Thank you.
Thank you. University of West Indies, you have 2 minutes for your concluding statements.
Am I audible and visible?
You are.
We started this debate with the claim that state compliance with human rights obligations must not include the protection of shared global resources. First, we made it undeniable that human rights with the protection of shared global resources increases the inequalities between developed and developing nations. The Bhopal case illustrated that developing nations often bear the burdens of the actions caused by developed states. Second, we showed that expansion leads to other violations of human rights. From indigenous land rights in Mexico to cultural rights in Norway, the evidence is clear. Environmental projects can clash with human rights. Third, we demonstrated that human rights with the protection of shared global resources is legally unsustainable. This is because human rights requires proof of direct and immediate harm, whereas environmental harm requires proof of collective and long-term damage. As such, this debate boils down to one simple choice: human rights as clear enforceable justice, or human rights diluted into vague environmental policy. The opposition argued for expansion of human rights, but we showed that this is erosion of rights, erosion of equality, and erosion of the law itself. To put it simply, human rights are like lifeboats that is built directly to save people directly. But if we try to carry the entire ocean in this boat, then the boat will sink and it saves no one. As such, at the end of this debate, one simple truth remains, and that is state compliance with human rights obligations must not include the protection of shared resources, and it must be human and people-centered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can all now relax. You are no longer under evaluation. Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate you all on completing the day 2 match that you had today. Well done on the research and execution of your arguments. Of course, for the scoring cards, there are 2 business days after this match for the 3 judges to submit already. Thank you very much for everyone for evaluating and looking into it. But at the moment, we have the opportunity for your teams to exchange on how was the preparation. If you perhaps heard familiar arguments from the other team that you have prepared for that side, and how did you find the exchange today? How did you find the debate?
It was a great debate. I think both of the sides made a great job on the investigations, and I think it was an important topic to touch. So I think both teams made a great debate.
Thank you. From University of West Indies, Ms. Cabrales, how was the debate?
Try to take the feedback from the previous debate and apply it to this. So that made the process a little simpler than before. However, it was still very rigorous.
Sanchez, how was the topic? Did you hear perhaps familiar arguments from the other team?
Yeah, personally, I think the topic that was picked for this debate is a really important topic that more people should talk about. So it was really interesting having a different focus, and I think both teams really did a great job at preparing and at stating their arguments. So it was a really glad experience. We've never participated in this format of competition before, and it was a really great experience. So I thank you all.
Thank you. Same question for Mr. Fernandez of University of West Indies.
The debate was interesting. In the past, I have read a lot of information concerning climate change, but I never really delved into it when it comes to like debating for having a debate concerning it. I just looked at the impact that the climate has had on the environment and the different solutions that the United Nations and other intergovernmental bodies has proposed. But it was very interesting, and I appreciate being a part of this debate.
Thank you. Ms. Alvarado of ULACIT team, how was the exchange today?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting. First of all, our positions were like the same, but everyone has their different point of views, as my colleague said. Just as the other thing, we didn't really get into environmental things. And right now, I think it was really interesting because we got to get the things we saw on the news and try to put it here into
Thank you. Universities of West Indies, Ms. Maharaj Sukhar, same question.
I thought this topic was very interesting because but actually putting it together and showing how it's for and against gave me a different perspective. I personally, after doing all this research, at the end of this research.
Yes, thank you for sharing. It can be quite a challenge to look into the 2 sides of the argument with challenging your own perceptions. So really well done, teams. And I would like to ask perhaps Professor Flores, as one of the three judges for this debate, is there perhaps a sneak peek you can give us, and how did you find the exchange today? Professor Flores, I think your microphone is muted and we cannot see you just yet.
Yes, you are unmute, but we cannot hear you.
Right. Well, technical difficulties. Do you also happen to our organizing teams? We do have, on the busy days, we have 15 minutes cash-in with matches. So perhaps let's move on briefly towards the networking part of today's session. The teams, you might already be aware, we usually ask 2 questions. You can answer as a group, so you can choose which one of you will answer first. And the first question to go is, what skill or aspect of legal reasoning that you have learned throughout your studies is what you are familiar with already? And what is the skill that you are perhaps being challenged with throughout the competition? The first team, perhaps ULACIT team, if you would like to start, what is the skill or aspect of legal reasoning that you are growing or being challenged?
I think research on international law, it's really difficult at the end of the day because we know a lot of Costa Rica, but we don't know a lot of international law and how each country has their own law and their own rules, because this happened like with this topic that they gave us for this debate. I think it was really about researching about different movements, different things that are in another country that is not Costa Rica, because Costa Rica is a really environmental place and has its law, but it's not the same as other countries. So I think that was else in a virtual way, because we have done some competitions, but like in person and not in virtual. So I think that was something that we
A different experience, maybe arguing not per se, but presenting our statements in English. We've done all of us clearly do speak English, but I think in a professional setting, like in a competition setting, it changes the way you view having a second language and expressing yourself in a second language. So I think that was less of a challenge, more of a different experience that we were glad to have. Thank you.
University of West Indies team, what skill or aspect of legal reasoning are you growing or being challenged to use more during the competition?
Because it's one thing for when you understand and internalize information, and it's another to express it in a way that others would understand. And I think for this debate in particular, with the complexity of the topics, you need to be very part of the world. So I think that for me, on a personal level, is something that I'm working on, and I think that the competition is assisting me in developing that skill. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps if your colleagues want to add?
When it comes to clarity, also, well, to be honest, I've never done that, to convey the information, what exactly the judges will be looking for, and just trying to line up the debate or organize the debate according to those standards. So just understanding all of those things, helps me to know how to better construct my arguments, which is something I really appreciate.
Thank you. Thank you, both teams. I'll be now passing floor to Professor Hunch to wrap us up with one final question.
Yes, and congratulations from my side as well for that match. That was very, very interesting, and to see as well the rebuttals and the conclusion introduction. So well done to both teams. And now a last question for this session. Have you been watching some other match? Have you seen other teams performing, or from previous editions as well? So I will ask each team, maybe could you tell me, yes, if you have observed some other match. So I will start with the team in Trinidad and Tobago.
Sorry, can you please repeat the question?
Yes, have you been watching some other match? Some, let's say, other teams performing in this competition or in the previous editions of the competition?
Yes, we have been looking at matches from this ongoing competition, even previous competitions as well. So it was interesting to see how teams would have constructed their arguments, and again, their delivery and the clarity of their arguments we were paying particular attention to.
Thank you. And any team or universities that you have noticed were, impressive or interesting in their way to perform? So
For this competition, so far, team, sorry.
Yeah, please continue.
Oh, for this 2026 edition, the University of Bologna, I looked at their first match, and that was impressive because they were very cohesive in the organization of their arguments. So I found that interesting, and I tried to learn from that as well, as I previously stated, to work on the clarity of my arguments. And previously, the University of Lusaka, in 2024, I looked at their matches, and the organization was there, and that is something I will hope to achieve beyond this competition as well.
Thank you. Now, same question for the team in Costa Rica. So, yeah.
In our case, we specifically saw the past years of our own team, like the participations of our own team, like to see like a little bit of the structure of the debate, of the rebuttals, the conclusions, and the way to like express the ideas. And we saw also for practice the first match of this group.
Okay, thank you. So, of course, we encourage you to as well observe what's happening in the other teams and in the other groups as well, because this way you will be able to anticipate as well. They might be even your future opponents. So in any case, it's as well reason this competition for networking. I know that you are not geographically very far, Costa Rica, to will be as well a networking session, so you'll be invited and you will hear information about it. So many thanks for this match. I wish you the best. You will receive the score sheets in a few days for this match, and we are looking forward for the next match, of course.